Welcome to the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. Have you ever wondered how people succeed in real estate and what steps they took to get there? If so, this podcast is for you. Your hosts, Sayla and Eileen Prack, interview top experts in the real estate community to share with you their real estate journey and how they achieved massive success. Our goal is to provide you with valuable real estate resources and to help you apply it to your own real estate goal. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Prack. And today we've brought on a fantastic guest for you, Ken Van Liew, and a little bit about his background. He started his professional career with a civil design engineering job, 2 twins and 2 master's degrees. And he had a 6-figure debt and a burning desire to serve others. And 16 years later, he was able to cut the ribbon on a development of a $17 million, 72,000 square feet, 113 bed assisted living facility. And so I think his story is incredible. He has a ton of experience in this space. He was part of the Tony Robbins group. And during that time, in the event in Hawaii, his waterfront development was actually terminated due to the World Trade Center tragedies. And so I'm curious a little bit more to hear about that story and how that all happened. But alongside all these, everything that he was going through, he has also participated and worked on syndications and developments of over $1 billion of high-profile real estate investments. He's also wholesaled 137 deals in 1 year as a co-founder of Flipping USA, and then also created the Modern Wealth Building Formula as the fastest track to building wealth, a project that has empowered thousands of investors over the last 20 years. So Ken, I am super excited to have you on the show today. There's so much in your background. There's so much to deep dive into. So let's jump right into it. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Oh, thank you so much for that tremendous introduction, Eileen. It's just a pleasure to be here today on this wonderful, sunny, fun Friday.
Absolutely. So Ken, in your bio, there's just so much to uncover there, but let's kind of go back to the little bit at the beginning. And if you can give us a little bit more color and insight into, who you are, your background, and how did this all get started with you in real estate?
Great question. I was raised in a middle class, family, lower to middle class family, and I wasn't that smart. In 4th grade, I had some challenges, but I grew up next to New York City, and we used to go to, all of our class trips were to New York City, and we'd go to the top of the Empire State Building, and then they built the World Trade Center, and I would just look out and dream about, building projects. I always liked tinkering around with, trucks and buildings and things like that. And, it was a dream early on. And, going into, college and my career, I really wasn't that smart, but I figured if I can become an engineer one day, I would do okay, and I put really the experience I had from the gridiron of playing football. I was an all-state football player. So I know how to, read a playbook and execute and tackle people, and, I went into civil engineering, which only lasted a short time because I won some awards. I learned how to develop and design site development, but, I didn't like sitting at a desk. So, I took a job in New York City as a super on a skyscraper. And then that's kind of started my career. And then after working in construction, it led to the real estate,
So after construction, it led to real estate. And so at that time, what did you do to get into real estate? And what were the first couple of things that you had done as your first couple projects?
Yeah. And, I came in a little bit different. So, when I went into construction, it was tall buildings, 30-story buildings. I received a license to supervise those types of projects. And I just finished building $100 million project, and I was $100,000 in debt with twins. And I'm like, something's not making sense here, And, it was in 1996 where I said, if I could figure out how to build something, I could pay myself a fee, because I knew that the contractors made some money and overhead, and the developer made money. And I just had this dream. If I could get a $10 million project, I could break out on my own, and I started thinking about it in 1996, 1997. I formed a company. And by 1999, I basically put together a $17 million assisted living development where I was able to pay myself, $1.6 million through the development fee, construction fee, and then obtain ownership in that asset. So that's how it all started.
So from the start, when you decided that you're going to take this into your own hands and build something out of it and actually pay yourself a fee instead of becoming into debt, it took you 3 years to start up your company and to get into and build out the development project on that assisted living project. What did you do differently this time around to be able to make money off of that and set yourself up to be able to, instead of, going into debt versus like actually making a profit on that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it was slightly different, but in that first deal, I did make money and I invested in a waterfront. And actually in 1997, I formed the company. In 1999, I bought the 12-acre site and within 13 months had it opened, and I financed it through the EDA, New Jersey EDA, with using other people's money and other people's experience essentially on that first real estate deal. And, when I rolled that money into a waterfront property, the first challenge was the World Trade Center collapse, where we lost that investment, rebuilt ourselves back up. And then 2008, we had just done, several skyscrapers in New York, and Lehman Brothers was our partner. But I guess, what do I do differently now versus then, where I was more fee-based because I had to get started. I had twins. I was raising a family. I didn't come from wealth, so you had to have that disposable revenue coming in, in order to make the transition. But as life went on, and you were able to obtain some of your own equity, and I learned more about syndication. I was able to take larger ownership pieces and continue to pay myself fees. So it's always been my approach, not that I could do it on every single project, but most of the stuff where there's entitlement work and development work, it's ideal for, the civil engineering skill sets that I have to kind of bring it to the investment, and so that the investors benefit also.
When you were at that Tony Robbins event and you had found out that the waterfront property was no longer there, or it was no longer there at that point, what did you have to do in order to rebuild what had been lost? It
was a tough time. And I was so thankful that I was with Tony Robbins because, growing up and being in Manhattan, when I came back, it was not only a disaster from the sense of business and everything basically shutting down, but I lost some really good friends. One friend, Anthony Starita, I knew was at his desk at 7:00 for Cantor Fitzgerald. And when we came back, I just remember Tony saying, "Hey, your feelings are based on what you focus on." And I just really tried to focus on helping people. My waterfront had a view of the World Trade Center, and you literally could walk out. It was a gated community onto the promenade to the ferry and take it over to the World Trade Center. And, when I got back from Hawaii, that deal didn't exist anymore. So, for several months, we didn't really know what was going to happen. Well, how I did get out of it because of the skill sets is I actually landed a construction job where I renovated a country club, and I did some work at some healthcare facilities because I had just, finished building an assisted living. So I knew all about healthcare. And, I weathered the storm, and then built it back up over time. But, the one thing I will say is, if people mentor themselves and give themselves an education and then they lose their money, if they know how to make money, which going to college doesn't teach you how to make money. But when you get out there in the school of hard knocks and what I had just went through, I was able to recreate it again, with a little bit more safety mechanisms until Lehman crashed, and that was out of our control also, You
could look at it two different ways, I think, also. When either you could go back, if you had experienced something like that, you can go back and decide, I'm going to rebuild myself and do the things I need to do in order to get to where I was previously, or even further down the road. I can take this success, or I can take this lesson and this challenge that I'm facing and make something out of it. Or I could go down a different path completely and shift my focus. For you, what helped you, I guess, determine that you wanted to take those lessons learned from that experience and then move forward and build to it, because you've done so much since then?
Yes. I tell people, and it's the truth, I've been a magician. It's an art, like art, and since I was 12 years old, and, I've always been very creative in my magic and making people feel important. And during those toughest times in my life, I would revert to my magic, and my art, whether it's painting or whatever, and, be with yourself to realize that, hey, you can't blame yourself when the market crashes. And it's hard not to, because, when something like that happens of that impact, the severity, you could easily slip into a rabbit hole, so you have to really kind of step out away from the hole and look at, what just occurred, collect the facts. We couldn't do much with Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers going bankrupt, and they were holding major loans for us. Obviously real estate turned me off for a little while. I did some magic, I was doing trade show magic and creating educational programs because, I realized that, I had a lot of knowledge. I was a big real estate advisor in New York City for the largest developers, and then I was able to develop on my own. And, I just wanted to pay it forward, and it was just one of those things where I, didn't put my mind on, hey, we crashed, this is never going to happen again. And sure enough, 3 years later in 2012, just came back with vengeance, where I joined a firm as a director. We built over 300 units in New York City. We started a concrete company. We were pouring towers, and that led me into, wow, this formula really works. Let me try it on residential. And that's when I did a 1-year diversion to test it. We did the 137 deals. Then we wrote the book, so it's just been this really cool journey. And now we have some really crazy projects happening. And I was mentioned about the national documentary. So life is fabulous. My kids are getting the last two are getting married this year, and just having fun with life, paying it forward.
Oh, that's so amazing. When you talk about this formula, because that's also part of the book that you have written, the Modern Wealth Building Formula, what does that look like? And how is it different compared to when you were first starting, if there's any changes at all on how people can start building up wealth in today's environment versus, in the past?
Yeah. I think the thing that differentiates, people, well, what was the old formula? What's the difference between the modern formula? I think it really comes down to, my dear friend, Jack Canfield, Tony Robbins, it's all about, the continuous and never ending improvement and the pre-game planning and taking more, of a sports outlook on things, because I won a lot of state championships, and you just don't become a state champion like that. You have to have a playbook. You have to have coaches that can see things you can't see, mentors in our game. And, and you have to reward yourself and set up, and keep it simple. What I really emphasize in the book, real estate is finding deals, funding deals, and facilitating deals, so where people are like, well, I can't find any deals, it's too competitive. Well, that's not true, because, there you can get deals through architects, engineers, lawyers, classified ads, data. There's a lot of ways to find deals, and you can get better at finding deals in many, many different ways. Funding, there's 50 different ways to fund a deal, to structure a deal. You're always being creative, meeting new investors, practicing your money pitch, and facilitation, depending on if it's real estate development, the process could last 3 years versus just one transaction. So, I write a little bit of how that all blends together, and how, building a skyscraper or building a real estate business, and how the modern wealth building applies really to business and building an extraordinary life, is what it's all about, because you can have all the money in the world. If you're not enjoying life and, having the fulfillment that you deserve, what good is all the money? It's great having money, but I tell you, one of the most fulfilling times I ever had was after the World Trade Center collapsed, and Tony Robbins had Fulfillment Day. It was Contribution Day. And I went and painted like a hotel, and we helped homeless people, and you come back and you feed people and you help, and that makes you grow. And that's what really makes you happy. That was a long-winded answer there. Sorry about that, my dear.
I love that. Thank you. So in your formula for creating wealth and building it out, what are the key components that you need in order to build out your wealth in your formula?
Yeah, I think the key components really is, identifying what you don't know, realize what you know, and surround people, and build a dream team, I call it, of people around you that that know more than you, and really, I call it ego subrogation, where you lose your ego, build that dream team and set yourself up with, systems that work and mentors that can surround you, right? You want to set yourself up where, hey, if you have questions, you want to be able to, answer a question and get the answer quickly, right? You don't want to spend 100 hours that you can learn something in 10, right? You want to always be open-minded to listen, hey, and realize, I could always have a better system. I could always be more time effective. I could always block my time better. I could always build better, deep emotional rapport with people, which makes a huge difference when you're raising money. You can, we talked about the personal development, always polishing your skills. But when you start to look at the micro distinctions that will make maximum impact, it makes a huge difference. One of the things, I got the idea from Joel Bauer. He was a magician, but I call it my 5-5-5 system, where not that it makes a difference today because the world's changed a little bit, but my 5-5-5 system was, take 5 more minutes in the morning to just put a little extra touch on you. One of my signatures, you'll see in a lot of my pictures, I wear a hanky in my sport jackets, or, and I wear really funky socks, right? But you take 5 more minutes to get ready, right? And when you get in the subway, when you're going to New York City and you got to go to a meeting, you're definitely 5 degrees hotter. But when you get to that meeting, you just took that little extra, you're going to make 5 times the impression, and I'm not saying you have to get dressed up to gain respect, but if you're in a market that you feel that it's competitive, because I believe, competition doesn't actually exist if you merge ecosystems and you view things from a different perspective, but you're going to make 5 times the difference in that impact of that meeting just because of your approach and the way you took it. So, I really look at the micro distinctions. It's what's going to differentiate you from other investors, and, utilize some of what I found, really works across the board, not only in life, business, but obviously real estate,
So I really love your output and what the things that you're talking about of look different light, a different perspective. So I guess my question for you is, who has been or what has been the biggest impact in your life to influence the way you're thinking, your outlook on life and wealth building and real estate investing and all of that? What has been the biggest impact for you?
I always contributed to, a few things, because I remember when I first got married and I had all these ideas, and, I was just a young engineer, and, I remember taking like my Dale Carnegie class and learning how to get up on stage and talk, which is like the biggest fear in the world, and then years later, I did some work with Landmark Worldwide, and it was right after the collapse happened. And, there's controversy around it, but it had me look at things, from an empty and meaningless standpoint, that, you can create anything in your mind that to upset you if you choose, and you can create anything in your mind to make yourself happy, and that was an impact. And that was after a lot of the work that I did with Tony, who impacted my life tremendously, in the aspect that, hey, if you want to make a difference in the world, you need to be in shape. You need to have unlimited energy. You need to, contribute. You need to realize that certainty in life, which is, mostly the number one human need that people want, they don't realize that the only way that you get your number one human need is if you're 100% comfortable with uncertainty, right? And obviously those human needs, I think, make a big, big difference in, what we're talking about. What do you really want in life? And, what do you want in your real estate? And then once you're clear, the clarity is what gives you leverage in order to accelerate to the conclusion that you want, or the outcome that you want.
No, absolutely. Well, I love that, because what he says, certainty, the only certainty in life is uncertainty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can hear him in my brain all the time. But, I was just, back when now he does events that are huge, but when I used to hang out with Tony, like the first fire walk, there was like just 900 people there. The last one I went to, there was like 9,000. It was crazy.
Wow.
I was like, the whole stadium was shaking. I was like, I couldn't believe it. And I was like, I'm getting out of here. But I walked fire. We had fun. It was great.
For you and for, you're writing the book, you're putting it together, you've done so much within real estate. And so for someone who's looking to get started or looking to get into real estate, start to build out their wealth, utilize some of the concepts in your formula, like what are some of the, I guess maybe the three top things that people can start doing today to start building up their wealth and changing the trajectory of their financial future?
Yeah, I would say three things. I mean, number one, you need to leverage your money. In my experience, and if you just look at, the statistics, not a large percentage of people make more than $100,000, right? So you can't expect people in today's to have a lot of disposable revenue, right? So, first and foremost, I think people are afraid to leverage their money and put teams together in order to invest in real estate that you can benefit. I think that's important to get started, and then the second thing is play the odds, because 9 out of 10 millionaires are in real estate, and real estate, even if you're passive or active, just has so many tax advantages and reasons why you should not be in real estate, in other words, right? So, and then, really the third thing is the mentorship. You don't want to, like I said before, I didn't say devalue yourself, but not realize how valuable your time is. And you just sit there trying to figure it out, because with all the distractions in life, you're most likely not going to be able to sit down for a couple hours and think it through or have dialogue with someone that actually has done it before. So, I just found, there was 1 year before I wrote my book, I had 9 coaches. And I needed to learn about media, and I needed to learn about a one sheet. And I needed, what do you say when you're on the spot? And I'm still not great at it. I'm just a normal guy. I put my pants on one leg at a time. Today I was just kind of having fun. We had a planning board meeting late last night. We shot the national documentary last week. We're working on a 45-acre development in North Carolina. We have another 30 acres in New Jersey. So just thinking and working smart, thinking big and working smart.
That's so incredible. A national documentary. And when is that coming out?
They say it's going to be about 8 weeks in production, and then there's going to be some back and forth because there's some commercials, and I believe it's going to probably be somewhere around September. And we're real excited. That's with Dennis Quaid. I didn't even know he was doing educational documentaries, but my phone lit up, my cell phone one day, it said TV. I'm like, hey, I'm going to pick that up. And they said, you're one of 7 of 10 people that are being interviewed. And, the next thing you know, I was selected. So it was really, really exciting.
As a young kid and looking back today, where you are today, and looking back to, yourself when you're in the 4th grade, looking at those engineers, looking at those construction sites, playing with cars and everything like that, had you ever expected or dreamt that your life would look like today? Or did you think of that it would look something a little bit different?
Yeah, I never ever, I dreamt about it, but, as I watched it, evolve over my, my life, when I landed my first project building like a 30-story building, I was pinching myself. I still thought I was not enough. I kept going to school at night. I would work all day, and then eventually I realized, wow, you have a couple degrees, not a lot of people have that. And it really wasn't until I got knocked down until I started, wanting to, build the educational platform. And, I have a tendency to go off on a sidetrack. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but you can dial me back in. So, that's really kind of been the journey. And I really didn't, to have like twins and, my son being, an officer in the military, like a intelligence officer, and my daughter marrying a doctor, and my other daughter at 23 buying her own house, and, being with my lovely wife for 37 years, everything I have ever dreamt about actually came true, So what I didn't think is that I would, literally be able to develop my own property. I shouldn't actually say that, because when I won that award in engineering school, I planted a seed that one day I was going to develop, now that I'm thinking about it. But like anything else, when you come from nothing and someone just says to you, hey, you need to go build a career and work yourself up the corporate ladder, you're getting these two mixed messages. So subconsciously, I think, I always believed, that I could do it. And it was really that transition, because even after I developed my first project and then lost it, all of a sudden I lost my confidence a little bit, and then I did it again. I lost. I says, okay. One of my mentors says, you know what? You're going to lose it twice before you make it. And I'm like, now I get it. And you'll probably make all your money between 55 and 60. So I kind of knew that at 60 years old, I said, one of my goals at Life Mastery in 2001 is I wanted to be in the best shape of my life. I was 246 pounds then. I now weigh 170.
Wow.
But I'm in like tip-top shape. And my son is a U.S. Marine. My daughter is a nutritionist, dietitian. And, now it's about health and fitness and, creating educational platforms that everybody in the world can get value, whether it's residential, commercial, real estate development, and to do what I say and to, just help people, because, there's nothing really else to do. I'm done, working, those 18, 20-hour days. Now it's really working smarter, paying it forward, creating a future for others, letting the next generation step up, realizing where, technology interferes. I built skyscrapers, when they had the fax machine that when it came out, it was all rolled up and you had to put paper weights on it to hold the darn thing open to read it. And, we were, doing prints and the whole loading dock would have drawings and the trades would come in and there was no digital, none of that, in 1996, I wrote a paper called Plan Room 2000 because I envisioned a lot of this. So to answer your question, I actually did. And, no one ever actually asked me that question before. And that's why I probably got a little flustered and had to think about the answer. But yeah, I've been blessed. And I said to myself, I'm going to be in the best shape of my life, extremely successful. And at 60 years old, being able to give it forward. And there's nothing better to be able to say that we're going to be going out to 60 million households in September, just sharing what we know, and I'm really excited.
Wow. That is incredible. That is incredible. And congratulations on not just the real estate, but then the personal success and then also the physical success as well. I think that's incredible what you've been able to do so far. And just at the young, ripe age of 60 years old.
I feel good. So it's fun. It's fun. I'm going to live to 125. So we're good.
So Ken, if there's one thing that you know now about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started, what would that be?
Don't sell, just hang in there. There's a lot of times I panicked and sold and, liquidity will soon come. Hold it, it's great investment.
I also wanted to ask too, because you've been in the industry for quite some time now, you've seen the ups and downs, you've been through, several volatile markets within real estate.
Sure.
And looking forward now, how do people protect themselves or things that they could be looking forward in order to prevent or at least, mitigate some of that risk of a potential downturn? Yeah.
Yes, I always have to go to the basics. So things will cycle and, I know everybody's, you have to, kind of keep your lane with your asset class. But when cycles occur, certain asset classes go out, right? So, you could, obviously you want to be very, as precise as possible with your calculated risks, always be clear on exit strategies. Don't, if you can, put all your eggs in one basket. I know it's hard if you're in, funds and stuff like that. You have to kind of stay in your lane. If it says multifamily, you have to do multifamily. But, during like this tough time, I did a lot of entitlement work, which now has the pipeline packed for development stuff to sell off. And these are the things that you have to be able to do. It's all about pivoting, trying to vertically integrate as much as you can and sticking to those fundamental basics, checking demographics, making sure your numbers work, making sure you have safety factors, variables in there on your underwriting and things like that.
And if there was one thing that sets the successful people apart in real estate, what would that be?
Yeah, I think number one, it's the people that have the extreme passion because, then it's not work for them. They're just having fun, and real estate for me is, I have to force myself to sleep because, I just, woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day, like an automatic alarm clock and, would stay up till midnight, either studying it in NYU or Rutgers or teaching it or, studying for my PE license, and it never seemed like work for me. And, and now I get to look back and go, wow, you don't need to spend 1,000 hours learning that. Just join my enterprise. I'll just show you, and that's what really fulfills me. Maybe, God said, I'm not going to teach you the shortcut. You're going to go do all that hard work, but then you got to give it to everybody else, and that was okay with me because, fortunately I was in New York, every day was the fast lane. So, if you didn't get through the tunnel before 6, it would take you 2 hours to get to work. And I was only 21 miles from New York City. And I may be rambling a little bit, but I'm just sharing, the greatest times of my life, driving to New York every day, having that routine of getting up early, realizing that, hey, if you're up early with a morning routine and taking care of your body, and the next thing you know, you're putting, a couple extra hours in a day over 300 days, that's 600 hours. You divide that by 40, you have a lot of weeks, and I used to go, okay, I'm going to get 3 extra hours every single day. I'm good. I'm going to get like 72 extra weeks this year. I'm going to be way ahead of the game. I was crazy.
So even during the hard times, the ups and the lows and the downs, what continues to drive you?
Right now I'm driven. I'm like in this really cool civil engineering project, 45 acres, but I don't have to do the engineering. I hire someone, but I get to go, oh, that looks really cool. Can you put the path here? And I really like it because it's so tangible, and you create woods. And then the next thing you know, I'm going to have a wellness center, and I'm going to have a hotel, and I'm going to have self-storage, and we have multifamily. We have over 100 townhomes. And, to be able to create that, I'm going Monday for the vote. And then Tuesday I meet with the architect and the engineers, and, creating that is just fascinating,
Awesome. Well, Ken, I so appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. It's incredible. So, more experience than any of us would get in one lifetime, essentially. And so you've been able to share just a small snippet of that today with us in just, this last 30 minutes. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all that.
Yeah. Well, I really hope I gave value, and, I make myself, available, and, even if, one day, people are knocking my door down or something, but, I'm just joking, I'm always going to make myself, available because, I learned it the hard way. There was years I wasn't around, and then I became a scout leader for my son, and, camped 80 nights and hiked 120 miles and went on a lot of date nights with my daughter, and took my other daughter to a lot of horseback riding. And that's what made like a huge difference, when I was able to circle back and get closer and have more time, for all those years of sacrifice, and sit back and smell the coffee. And, tonight we're going to sit in, the Adirondack chairs and, hang out. And my wife said, "You're cooking tonight." So I'm like, okay. So I snuck over and got some bruschetta, and, we're going to mix it up a little bit,
Oh, that sounds amazing. So Ken, where can our listeners find out more about you?
Yes. I try to keep everything in one spot, keep it simple, at kenvanliew.com, KEN, V as in Victor, ANLIEW.com. You can get my 11 Millionaire Secrets, my 10 Golden Nuggets, my book for free. And if you want to talk to us, there's 45-minute strategy sessions. And, it's just real exciting. Whatever you're challenged with in life, whatever we can do to help you, just go to kenvanliew.com and check it out. It's my gift to you.
Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Eileen. It's been a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for listening to our podcast today, brought to you by Bonavest Capital. We would really appreciate it if you can go to iTunes right now and leave a rating and written review. Also, please don't forget to subscribe so you can always get the latest episodes. You can also connect with us on Facebook, How Did They Do It Real Estate. We'd love to hear your feedback and any topics that you're interested in for future episodes. Lastly, to learn more about us, you can go to bonavestcapital.com and fill out the Contact Us page so you can speak to us directly. Nothing on the show should be considered as specific personal advice. Please consult your legal, tax, and real estate professionals for individualized advice.